Hello Internet, I'm AG Squared, and this video marks episode 2 of my tax series videos. In episode 1 shown above, I covered an overview on key concepts about taxes and shared how I organize my documents to prepare when filing my taxes. In this episode, I'm going to focus on showing you the experience most of you would go through when filing taxes using TurboTax by having you shoulder surf or follow along as I file my taxes. Now, in this episode, I'm intentionally going to skip the following topics and instead release a follow-up episode for each. These topics are stock market and dividends gains or losses, owning a house as a primary owner, capturing investment property gains and depreciations, and selling a home as part of a 1031 exchange, which is effectively deferring taxes on a home sale. If this sounds interesting, consider subscribing to my channel for my latest tax series and other real estate, do-it-yourself renovations and repairs, finance, or technology topics. Okay, so let's get cooking, or should I say, taxing. Here are the high-level steps that the system will walk us through. First, the system will present you with options to identify what changes, if any, occur in the last year that may change your tax liability or deductions. Next is the wages/income. Then is any deductions. And lastly, it's reviewing your data and entering information to receive your refund or pay what you owe. The first step, which I've already done, is to create a TurboTax account. This step is easy and free to do so. Once created, every year you file using TurboTax, the system remembers your previous information and uses it to guide you through filing this year's taxes. It's a convenient way to tailor your experience based on your personal details, sources of income, and whether you are self-employed or an independent contractor or a full-time employee. The only caveat is unless you've had a significant change in lifestyle, whether that's marriage, having kids, going to school, changes to your income streams, or if you have relocated to a different state. This view is where you can select which options are relevant to your situation. At a minimum, most will either have a W-2, serve as an independent contractor, or be self-employed. However, you may also be a homeowner, have children, may have donated to a charity, may have transacted stocks, cryptocurrencies, or own rental properties, and so on. On here, I'm selecting what's relevant to my scenario. At this point, you get to choose your level of comfort in using the system. Unless you have a fairly complex tax return, I actually encourage you to try filing by yourself, and hopefully this video helps guide you in doing so. However, if your sources of income are complex, or you don't want to spend the time filing them, then it may be worthwhile to have someone do everything for you. It'll cost more, but in my experience, this still tends to be less expensive than a dedicated CPA. On this view, TurboTax provides an overview on the different tiers available to you. If your income is less than $79,000 per year, you'd be eligible to file your taxes for free using the left option. If you have a W-2 or pay rent or have children, but you don't have any of these other situations below, the option to the left is still the best for you. However, if you are a homeowner, have donated to charity, or other factors as seen here, the middle tier will allow you to maximize your deductions and is the best for you. And if you have all of that, and in addition trade stocks or own rental properties or other options as shown here, the tier on the far right is for you. In addition to selecting here, by adding the assistant add-on, you get a 7-year audit support if the IRS audits you. This is huge and worth every penny. On this view, you can see what options are relevant for my situation. Notice how I clicked Show Me More. This is important so that you can review all options in case it pertains to you. If, like me, you sold a home or rental property, you'll be asked if you want to connect to an agent to understand how it affects your taxes. I recommend doing this because the tax implications can be very substantial, and it's important to fully understand them. But for me, I'm well aware of my implications and how to even defer paying taxes on my sale using what's called a 1031 exchange. I won't cover that on this video, but we'll do so in a future episode. This view simply provides a summary of what you've entered so far and what's coming next. TurboTax, in a very worded and with a small font, is asking you here if you'd like to share your information for a more personalized analysis, which really translates to getting contacted by sales agents and offerings. But if you are interested in that, fill out this form. However, I'm not interested, so I selected no thanks. At this point, based on what you've entered, the system will give you a rough estimate on how long you'll take to finish filing. Not to worry, my return is likely much more complex than yours. I'd expect filing can take anywhere from 15 minutes to 45 minutes for most people. If you haven't filed before, however, you'll likely need to fill all this out. I've done that before, so all I have to do is review that this information remains accurate. It looks good to me, so I'll continue through the next questions. I am single, I don't have children, or support another person. Notice these hyperlinks. These are incredibly helpful to get guidance on how to correctly answer any question or fill out any form. If you'd like to get text messages about any IRS changes, you can check this box. I'll leave it unchecked since I'll be filling this soon regardless. I'll continue with the questions and confirm any existing information as you see here. Now it's time for income. If you've filed before with TurboTax, the system will actually ask you if previous forms of income are still relevant for you, or if you have any new sources of income you'd like to add. For me, as you can see here, I have a lot of sources of income, including rental property income, stock transactions, Uber driving, Treasury I-bond dividends, and more. Let's continue for now. I didn't withdraw money from my retirement plan. As I answer these questions, remember that your questions may be different based on what you entered earlier. This view shows all the types of income and expenses in a quick view. For this video, I'll only show me filling out the W-2 section. But in future episodes, I'll go through how I populate the investments and savings section, my Uber driving income, and my rental income, along with selling a home through a 1031 exchange. Here's what's really cool. If you filed before with a system and your employer hasn't changed, TurboTax will automatically populate your W-2 form on your behalf. But if you haven't filed before, filling this out is just as easy as uploading a PDF of your W-2 so the system can populate the form automatically. I'll show an example of this in a future episode using a different income type. This view just shows you a snapshot on what your tax bill or refund looks like, without any deductions or potentially additional sources of income. And then you're asked more questions to see if any uncommon situations pertain to you. Read these carefully, but more likely than not, the none of these apply to me option will be what you'll select. In this view, if you have additional W-2s, you'd be able to add them. I've skipped showing how I added all my other sources of income. But if you're interested, keep a lookout for future episodes as I'll go through those steps in great detail. For this episode, we can select Done with Income and proceed. We'll be navigated through some more questions for us to answer next. Apologies for the blurred view on the right. I had my W-2 open while I was doing this. This view shows all your tax breaks depending on what you entered in previous forms. It will be fully specific to your situation. For me, I was able to deduct a large amount of my rental property's mortgage interest and property taxes. As you scroll down, you'll be shown a vast number of potential additional tax breaks. I recommend clicking on the blue question mark to understand these better and determine if you are eligible for the tax break. The more breaks, the less money you'll owe or the more money you'll get as a refund. There are two types of deductions available to choose from, standard or itemized. On this form, based on all the information you've filled in so far, the system will let you know which one is higher and choose that one for you. Nearing the end, the system will perform a check to ensure everything is filled out correctly. If anything seems possibly wrong, you'll be presented with forms to review and possibly correct them. With the federal portions done, you'll be shown the amount you owe or how much you'll be refunded. Moving on to the state portion. This part is much faster since most of the previous information will be carried forward. We'll still need to answer some questions though. On this view, the system will show you anything that your state handles differently than the federal one does. Review this carefully and click on Start if any of these situations are applicable to you. As you see, clicking on the links will bring up more details to help guide you in making the appropriate selection. Lastly, the system will show you a list of your state's credits to see if you are eligible to reduce your taxable income. Same as before, review these carefully to minimize your state's taxable income. Entering any donations you made to your state's organization will also reduce your taxable income. On this one, review if any of these situations or forms apply to you. In many cases, I'll provide my email address to Georgia by clicking on Start. Well, we did it, fam. I personally prefer to file both federal and state taxes using TurboTax to benefit from audit support as well as for convenience. While we wait, I hope you found this useful. If you did, please consider subscribing and sharing this video with others. Heads up, I spent 7 hours doing this because I had to investigate how to correctly enter some of my more complex scenarios, such as that 1031 exchange to defer capital gains on a home transaction. This will be much faster for most folks. And even for me, I'll cut this down significantly now that I gain new experience I didn't have before. Now, my only complaint is that TurboTax makes it seem that certain things are required when in fact you can reject them. Here you can see that I agreed to give TurboTax information to improve my experience. I normally would have said no thanks here. Oh well, I'll keep a closer eye for this next year. Funny enough, I cut the second attempt and selected no thanks for this one. On this form, you're asked if you'd like to purchase Max. This one I do recommend purely due to the full audit representation in the case the IRS audits you. I'm going to continue with a Max add-on. Next, we have to pay TurboTax before we can file our taxes. You can select to pay with your federal return or pay with a credit card. And now you get to select how to receive your refund or pay for taxes owed. Intuit, the parent company of TurboTax, presents you with Credit Karma as the preferred way because they own that product. But I personally prefer direct deposit since I don't really want a Credit Karma account. But as you can see, you also have several other options available to you. Choose the one that you prefer. Last year, I selected direct deposit, so TurboTax retained the same routing and account number information as before. Double check these though, and make sure they're correct just in case if you changed banks or accounts. If you owe money like I do, you get to choose when to make the payment. I like to choose a couple weeks before it is due, just to be on the safe side. You then select whether you want to print and mail your taxes, or if you prefer to e-file. Since I already have all my documents in Google Drive, I prefer to go ahead and e-file them. I then have to enter my driver's license information. Lastly, it's time to e-sign my taxes. I click that transmit my return now, and it's time to crack open a beer after all of this. This wraps up this episode. In the next episode, we'll cover the additional steps for capturing any stock gains or losses, capturing any rideshare income, and capturing other capital gains from things like dividends or treasury I bonds. Thanks for tuning in and happy taxing.